Welcome students. This session is for BA second year English Literature paper second, that is prose and fiction. In this paper you have an essay by Aldous Huxley, Selected Snobberies. We'll be dealing with this essay Selected Snobberies in this session of mine. Aldous Huxley, he was born on July 26th, 1894 at Godalming, Surrey, England, and he died November 22nd, 1963 at Los Angeles, California, US. Before we come to his essay in detail, let's have a look at life and works of this author. Huxley was a member of the famous Huxley family who produced a number of brilliant scientific minds. So his family was quite renowned, and there were people in his family, his mother, his father, they were brilliant scientific mind people. He graduated from Balliol College, Oxford, with an undergraduate degree in English literature. Early in his career, he published short stories and poetry and edited the literary magazine Oxford Poetry before going on to publish travel writing, satire, and screenplays. So he tried his hand on a lot of things, writing short stories and poetry, editing magazine, publishing travel writings, satires, and screenplays, and even novelists. Best known for his novels and wide ranging output of essays, an examiner and sometimes critic of social norms and ideals, and possible misapplication of science in human life. So his works usually consist of his critique on social norms and ideals and how science is misapplied in human life. Huxley completed his first unpublished novel at the age of 17 and began writing seriously in his early 20s. So he started writing quite early in his life. His unpublished novel came at the age of 17, and his serious writing started in his 20s. He spent the latter part of his life in the United States, living in Los Angeles from 1937 until his death. So the later part of his life was in America. By the end of his life, Huxley was widely acknowledged as one of the foremost intellectuals of his time. So he's considered as a very famous intellectual person of his time. He was nominated for Nobel Prize in Literature 7 times and was elected Companion of Literature by Royal Society of Literature in 1962. So these were the honors that he received in his lifetime. Let me introduce you to this essay, Selected Snobberies by Aldous Huxley. What exactly do we mean by snobberies? Snobbery is a belief that some person, he or she, feels himself better than others. He thinks himself as superior and looks down upon others as inferior. So this selected snobberies, where writer is going to talk about various snobberies which are there in the world. So this is quite an interesting topic and suggests some snobberies with which most people in the world are affected. So anyone in the world has some snobbery or the other in his own self. The essay does not teach any moral principle but says whether we like it or not, but most of us do have some kind of a snobbery, though we may not be conscious of it. So here, a writer is not coming to any sort of a conclusion that snobberies are good or bad, but he just brings forth that all of us have some kind of a snobbery, whether we know about it or we do not know about it. The essay has been entitled Selected Snobberies, which means that writer discusses not all but some selected snobberies only. So he is not going to talk about all the snobberies that are there in the world. Rather, he's going to talk about some selected snobberies that are quite prominent among people in society. The selected ones here are the most common ones. So he has selected on the basis of common snobberies which are prevalent in society. These common ones are about diseases, booze, modernity, art, and culture. So these are the common snobberies which are there in society. Aldous Huxley's style is quite interesting, particularly the way he exposes the weakness of each snobbery. So there is a touch of humor, a gentle humor, and he writes about these snobberies in quite an interesting manner and exposes the weakness of people who practice these snobberies. Now let's start with the text. Aldous Huxley, in his essay, writes that all men are snobs about something. So nobody is unaffected by snobberies. Everyone has some snobbery about something or the other. One is almost tempted to add there is nothing about which men cannot feel snobbish. So, this sense of superiority, this sense of being better than others, uh, encompasses nearly all the things which are around us. So, everything around us can be a factor of being snobbish by people. But this would doubtless be an exaggeration. But he says if I talk about each and everything, that would be an exaggeration because he has somewhere decided that he's going to talk about some selected snobberies which are around us. There are certain disfiguring and mortal diseases about which there has probably never been any snobbery. He says the exceptions are always there. There are some diseases that disfigure a person, like leprosy or some mortal diseases, some very fatal ones, and people cannot be snobbish about it. People cannot flaunt superiority after having such diseases. I cannot imagine, for example, that there are any leprosy snobs. And for example, he gives of leprosy that if somebody has this disease of leprosy, they cannot feel themselves superior to other people. This disease, like leprosy, is nothing to flaunt about. They cannot talk highly about this, that they are superior to other people and others are inferior because they have leprosy and others do not. More picturesque diseases, even when they are dangerous, and less dangerous diseases, particularly when they are diseases of the rich, can be and very frequently are source of snobbish self-importance. And in a very humorous manner, he says, but there are a list of some diseases which are little less dangerous and they are not as picturesque as leprosy. They are not outwardly so obvious, and people call them as diseases of the rich, that only rich people have such diseases. And these sort of diseases are source of snobbish self-importance. Rich people have these diseases and they show that they are very important in society because they are suffering with such uh, less dangerous and disease of the rich. I have met several adolescent consumption snobs who thought that it would be romantic to fade away in the flower of youth like Keats of Mary Bashkirtseff. So there is a snobbery about dying young, and there are these writer calls as adolescent consumption snobs. So these are the people who are quite flaunting about their early death, and they say that's so romantic if a person dies very young in their life, and it's so romantic to fade away, and they compare themselves to Keats or Mary Bashkirtseff, who died very young in their age, and they call it this dying young as a snobbery. Alas, the final stages of consumptive fading are generally a good deal less romantic than these ingenious young tubercle snobs seem to imagine. So, talking about one's early death looks quite romantic, but writer says that basically the uh, consumptive fading, that is, the way a person slowly leaves this world, is not that romantic and beautiful as it looks like just in an idea. So it's not that romantic that these ingenious tubercle snobs seem to imagine. They think that to die of tuberculosis or to die young in their lifetime is a good and romantic idea, but usually the last stages of death are not so beautiful as they imagine it to be. To anyone who has actually witnessed these final stages, The complacent poeticizing of these adolescents must seem as exasperating as they are profoundly pathetic. He says, anyone who has actually seen that how basically people die, what are the final stages of death, if they have seen that, they were going to find that these complacent poeticizing, these satisfactory poeticizing of these adolescents, it seems quite irritating, exasperating, as they're profoundly pathetic. And one feels pity at them that they think that death is so beautiful and so romantic, whereas uh, if one dies quite young in his lifetime, the final stages of life are not so beautiful as they imagine it to be. In the case of those commoner diseases snob, whose claim is to distinction is that they suffer from one of the maladies of the rich, exasperation is not tempered by very much sympathy. He says, but if you look at those people who have commoner disease and they are snob about their diseases, they make a show of, they flaunt, they consider themselves superior to others because they say that they are better than others because they have a disease and which is called as disease of rich people, like diabetes or blood pressure, which only rich people have in their life. For such people, exasperation is not tempered by very much sympathy. You feel so irritated looking at these people that they don't even gain our sympathy, because we know that they are just making a show of their disease. People who possess sufficient leisure, sufficient wealth, not to mention sufficient health, go to traveling from spa, from doctor to fashionable doctor in search of cures from problematical diseases, which, insofar as they exist at all, probably have their source in overeating, cannot expect us to be very lavish in our solicitude and pity. He says that these people, these rich people, they have so much of leisure, so much of relax in their life, and they have so much of wealth, so they have so much of money that they don't know where to spend, and not to mention sufficient health. But I would say that their health condition is poor because they do not work hard physically. These people, out of their money, out of their richness, go traveling from spa, from doctor to fashionable doctor. Here, a writer, in a very humorous way, says fashionable doctor. They go to best of the doctors in search of cures from problematical diseases. So they go on searching for the cure of their problems caused by the diseases. And in parentheses, he writes, which in so far as they exist at all, first of all, they are not suffering from any disease. But if they do suffer from any disease, probably their source is overeating. The only thing that they can have a problem is that they have done overeating. Just because of eating much food, they have created some problem in their body. And just for this little thing, they keep on visiting one doctor after the other to get a cure for their disease. And such people cannot expect us to be very lavish in our solicitude and pity. He says that because basically they are not suffering from any disease, just because they have overeaten, cannot expect us that we very lavishly show our concern and pity and sympathy for such people, because they don't deserve any of such pity from our side. Before we move further in the text, let's analyze these paragraphs. Writer Huxley, he says, there is no end of snobberies, and all people have one kind of snobbery or the other, though there may be no leprosy snobs. He says people are snobbish about one thing or the other, but leprosy snobs do not exist. But disease snobbery is common enough. But still, there is a snobbery, disease snobbery, he says. People show off their problems of physical issues among people. There are many TB snobs, that is tuberculosis snobs, who wish to die while young, but their death is usually not so happy as they seem to imagine. Because to die of tuberculosis young in their lifetime is not a beautiful thing to happen. There are some rich snobberies, which are the snobberies of rich people. So he says there are some snobberies which only rich people usually practice. These rich people think that they suffer from several diseases and they run from one fashionable doctor to another in search of their cure. And these rich people, as I've already explained, they think that they have so many problems in their body and they keep on rushing from one doctor to other in search for cure. The truth about them is that they do not suffer from any diseases and are quite hale and healthy. The truth of their life is that they are absolutely fine. They don't have any disease. But such people are only disease snobs. But they love to make a show off as if they are not well. If they suffer from any disease at all, it is only that they overeat and they think that they suffer from several diseases. The only problem that they face is they have done the overeating because they are rich and they can afford a lot of things. So the problems created after overeating is the only problem that they have, and they think that they are suffering from multiple diseases. Overeating is their habit because they are rich people and they can afford to be disease snobs. And just because they have plenty of money uh, and they can afford a lot of doctors makes them a disease snub. So this is the analysis of the area, the text that we have covered up till now. We will continue with this essay in my next session.